5, 4. Now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this very special event dedicated to the fascinating story of how we humans live on the Earth. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to explore this narrative, this tale of how we can share this incredibly beautiful planet with other species. And actually, we are already living with them because we're interdependent on these non-humans, neighbors, hosts, and guests. The food we eat, the wood of our furniture, the paper of our favorite books, biodiversity is everywhere. Biodiversity is this living fabric of our planet. And whether you like it or not, you have trillions of bacteria inside your body at this very moment. UNESCO is currently celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Man and Biosphere, the MAB program, which is exactly focusing on this interdependence. The pioneering concept of MAB sustainable development intertwines the conservation of sustainable use of both biological and cultural diversity. And it now consists of 714 biosphere reserves in 129 countries. In other words, it's a great source of inspiration for how we can live together on Earth. But before we get into that, I'd like to get you through a little experience. I'd like to ask each and every one of you to sit comfortably and close your eyes. I know it's a bit awkward to ask you to close your eyes during a seminar, but please play along. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and think of the story you liked the most as a kid. The story that kept you awake late at night because you couldn't stop your imagination. Maybe it was a fictional story with monsters and magic. Maybe it was a true story that happened long before to the old cousin of your neighbor's uncle. Think of the characters of this story. Think of their names, their outfits, their dreams, their fears. Think of all the emotions you felt when you were immersed in this story. It was probably a mix of joy, fear, and excitement. Can you feel them again? It feels good, right? That's because we, as a species, are immersed in stories, in tales, in myths that shape us as individuals, as families, as societies, as civilizations. All over the world, cultures have always been built on stories. And many of them are based on oral storytelling traditions, and they have been recognized as part of the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. Let's quote, for example, the Medalik tradition, a Turkish theater form performed by a single storyteller called a Meda and practiced throughout Turkey and Turkish-speaking countries. We could also think of the Yimakan storytelling, which is essential to the worldview and historical memory of the Hejin ethnic minority in Northeast China. Or we could quote the Kugere oral tradition of the Basungora, the Banyan Bindi, and the Batoro people in Uganda. Why does it matter to us today? It matters to us because we, as humans, need to tell ourselves a new story. Climate change is hitting us fiercely, and biodiversity is facing unprecedented threats. We are witnessing the 6th mass extinction, and the first mass extinction caused by another species, us humans. But an American literature professor named Joseph Campbell studied many stories and myths from all over the world, and he finds that the most of them follow a similar pattern that he describes in his book, The Hero's Journey. I'm going to tell you how he describes them, this narrative pattern. So a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there, encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero then comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow men. So what we're going to do over the next 2 hours together is explore and write this collective story of how we, humankind, are the main protagonists. Some of us have always maintained a close connection with nature, while others have somehow cut these links and forgotten their roots. And this is a unique time to write our story, and we have the power to write it. What we need is to be creative. What we need is to embrace our vulnerability. And actually, the COVID-19 pandemic has reminded us that we are humble living beings, subject to biological constraints. We are living beings with a head, and we've been using it a lot to domesticate our environment. But we also have a heart and a body filled with bacteria. And we won't be able to write a different story if we don't embrace this vulnerability, our hearts and our emotions. If we don't act with humility, we need to be aware of what we're inflicting on the earth, but we also need to be aware that we as humans are part of the solution. And today, UNESCO, with the support of Spark News, would like to share with you stories of brave people who have swum against the current, who have stepped up, who have fought, who have dreamed, who've had a vision. These inspiring pioneers are going to help us weave this new story. They are environmentalists, scientists, entrepreneurs, students, artists. They're coming from all over the world, and they're going to guide us through this unique global journey. As Gandhi says, they are the change they want to see in the world, and they illustrate what it means to be at the service of something bigger than ourselves. And these embody the courageous pivot, the tipping point, the change of trajectory that we encourage you to make today as well. Another helpful ally will be Véronique, also known as Véron, a fantastic illustrator who will translate into images and drawings all the ideas and emotions that we will have during this event. So maybe we can take a look at Véron's screen, and you'll see that over the next 2 hours, it's gonna get really enriched by all the emotions, ideas, examples that emerge. So I hope you're all ready to start this journey on how we can live together on Earth. And we'll start with the first sequence. So to start, we're gonna listen to The Earth Keeper, a poem written by Scott Momaday, a Native American writer. It will be read by David Coburn, and as a background, you will contemplate images from The Explorers, an audiovisual project showcasing the Earth's natural, cultural, and human heritage and wonders. And they're using the latest generation technology. Please enjoy.
We humans must revere the earth, for it is our well-being. Always the earth grants us what we need. If we treat the earth with kindness, it will treat us kindly. If we give our belief to the earth, it will believe in us. There is no better blessing than to be believed in. There are those who believe that the earth is dead. It can be allowed to thirst. It can be cut down. Worst of all, it can be denied our faith in it, our belief. But if we speak to it, if we pray, it will thrive. When we dance, the earth trembles. When our steps fall on the earth, we feel the shudder of life beneath us, and the earth feels the beating of our hearts. And we become one with the earth. We shall not sever ourselves from the earth. We must chant our being, and we must dance in time with the rhythms of the earth. We must keep the earth.
What a nice way to start our journey. It was again The Earth Keeper, a poem written by Scott Momaday and read by David Coburn on images by the explorers. So now let's move forward. In the upcoming sequence, we'll welcome experts from all over the world to better understand what is at stake. We'll need to use our brain, we'll need to use our head to visualize the deep interdependence of human beings on non-human living beings. Why do we urgently need to rethink the way we live together on Earth with other species? What is this decisive victory all about? And what world can we dream of for the future? So I'll start with you, Bill McKibben. You are an American environmentalist, a journalist, and the leader of the climate campaign group 350.org. 350.org, sorry. You received many awards, including the Gandhi Peace Award in 2013, and you've written dozens of books. One of them, your most recent one, Falter, deals with the threats to planet, combining fear of bad outcomes with hope for good outcomes. And another book, written long before, has the perfect title for the collective story we're writing, since it's called Hope, Human and Wild, True Stories of Living Lightly on the Earth. So Bill, could you let us know why do you think it's urgent that we need to live lightly on the Earth?
Absolutely, Emma. Thank you so much for letting us all be a part of this conversation. Look, for a long time, human beings have turned their back on the Earth around them more and more and more as they've become richer, more urbanized, supposedly more sophisticated, and less in contact with the world around them. That had problems from the beginning, and we've caused a lot of environmental damage in the course of doing it. But it's now reached a point of absolute emergency. Your colleagues at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the world's climate scientists gathered together by the UN over these last decades, in their last report in October of 2018, said that unless we all could figure out how to cut our emissions in half by 2030, then the targets we set in Paris just 5 or 6 years ago would go by the board. And as that happened, we'd lose enormous amounts of the things that we've taken for granted. We've already lost a lot. Think about how the stories have begun to change. You know, one of the great moments in the human relationship with the planet came in the late 1960s when the first American spaceships sent back images of the Earth from outer space. And all of a sudden, humanity saw this blue-green marble floating in the black void. That was supposed to bring us all together and help us understand what we needed to do. Not so much yet. In fact, if you look at those pictures now, they're very out of date because the world doesn't look like that anymore. We've lost a great deal of the white that's up top, as more than half the sea ice in the summer Arctic is melted now. But that's the story that we've got to get back to. And it's a story that we can begin to imagine now in new ways. One of the most beautiful ways to think about where we are right now, and it draws on that work of Joseph Campbell about mythic archetypes, is to understand that the biggest of the problems that we're in, the climate crisis, has been triggered by 250 years of digging stuff up and burning it. We've gone deep underground into coal mines and oil wells and come up with hydrocarbons and set them on fire, and it's the result of that combustion that's warming our temperature. Happily, thanks to great scientists and engineers, we no longer have to do that. In fact, we could cease burning things on this earth entirely and rely on the fact that there's an enormous burning ball of flame set 90 million miles away in the sky quite conveniently. And now we know how to take advantage of it. We know how to set up solar panels to catch its rays. We know how to set up turbines that can harvest the wind produced by the differences in heating between different parts of the planet. We could tell an entirely new story about energy from above instead of energy from below, a story that fits with an awful lot of our religious and mythic ideas about the underworld and the overworld, about who we are and what we might be. So I think it's a moment for really powerful storytelling. And I think that storytelling is tremendously important. A new metaphor is as useful as a new, solar
Technology or
design.
tool. Yeah. And what role can the media play to help humankind tell this new story?
Well, the media is actually getting better at doing this. There were a number of years when the media could have cared less about almost all of this, and was completely focused on the old story, a story that everybody told, including the people who ran places like the UN, which was that the future was all about making the economy bigger all the time, that was the most important enterprise that human beings were engaged in. And maybe for a while that was true, but it's not true anymore. The most interesting enterprise that humans are engaged in at this point is survival. And so now there are a lot of journalists who have begun to tell that story and tell it on the business pages and the financial pages and everywhere else, as well as in the scientific reporting and things. And it's beginning to pay off. Yesterday, we saw remarkable news from around the planet. A Dutch court told Shell Oil, biggest oil company in the world, that it had to cut its emissions in half. Investors in the United States told Exxon, dirtiest oil company on the planet, that they had to get some new directors on their board and start taking climate change seriously. All of that's because the real hero's journey that people have undertaken over the last 10 or 15 years is to build a massive movement. And that movement has worked on divestment from fossil fuel. It's worked on building new clean energy standards. It's worked on sharing clean energy with the developing world. And it's been embodied in scientists, but also in religious leaders, in indigenous communities.
Yeah.
It's had leadership from the Pope, and it's had leadership from kids in junior high and high school. Everybody knows about Greta Thunberg. That's one of the great stories on the planet, but there are 10,000 Greta Thunberg.
She's not alone. And later we're gonna welcome another young activist. Thanks a lot, Bill.
10 million followers everywhere, and it's a good sign.
Yeah. So now I'm going to officially open the second sequence, but I'll get back to that and I'll get back to you, Bill. So we can go on with the other background. All right, thanks a lot, Bill. And so now I'd like to welcome Victoria Reyes Garcia. So Victoria, you're a Spanish research professor. You're working at the Institut de Ciencia y Tecnología Ambientales at the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona. Your research focuses on local ecological knowledge systems. And from 1999 to 2004, you lived among Tsimane hunter-gatherers in the Amazon region, where you had long-term research. So in a recent paper, you explain how biodiversity and international policy could and should include more indigenous people. Could you please tell us why indigenous people are also part of the solution?
Thank you, Emma, for the invitation to share our research and to help construct this narrative and this mission that we have here today. And as Bill was saying, indigenous people or other ways of seeing nature and of relating with nature are important, because the system we have constructed, as Western, as scientists, it's not working anymore, right? We have reached a point where we are destroying nature. We have created problems like climate change. And we think, and we know that this is all human doing. But there are
Sorry, Victoria, I'm just going to ask you to take your mic a bit further from your mouth because we hear you a bit. No, it's okay. Thank you, Alex.
Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, I think it's better. Thanks.
So yeah, I was saying that we know that the situation in which the planet is now, we have created it ourselves, but it's only one way of living in the planet. This is one civilization that has the major responsibility for the state of the planet. And there are many ways of living on Earth. So in our work with Indigenous people and with local communities, we have seen that the areas that they manage are also the hotspots of biological diversity, that they are able to fight when they see that there are companies, that there are oil companies, mining, wood extraction companies that want to hurt the earth and that want to extract more resources. They are able to kind of like put themselves in advance and defend their territory. They have other visions on how to relate with nature. It's not only a vision in which you extract, but it's also a vision in where you keep nature for future generations. And they have all these different concepts that we are all part of the same entity, right? They don't see themselves separate. And in that sense, I think it's very important for us to look at other ways of living in this idea of looking for solutions. So solutions are not only technical. Solutions doesn't go only through constructing new technologies that help us save energy or something like that. It also goes in a way in relating in different ways with the environment. And for that, I think Indigenous people and local communities can be a great source of inspiration for us.
And what inspiration can we get from them in terms of value system? Because we know that we need to switch to a more sustainable value system. What can we learn from them?
So in our value system, it's a lot based in the material value of things. What can we get from different things, from nature or even from relations? And Indigenous people, of course, there are many types of Indigenous cosmologies and visions, but there is more value in the relationships. It's a more relational value. So it's what do I get and what do I give? So it's more like a value based in harmony, in maintenance, in caring, not only in getting things for me or getting material, but it's also based on this idea of care, this idea that we are not using the land, we are borrowing the land. So it's like if you borrow a book from the library, you will not spoil the pages that you like the most. You just keep it for the next to use. So this value of continuity and sustainability, this is something that we definitely need to put above in our scale of values, above the material or the consumption value, which unfortunately this is what we are prioritizing in our society.
Thanks a lot, Victoria. I'll now welcome Valérie Cabanès. Valérie, you're a French legal expert and environmentalist. You've launched the campaign movement Notre Affaire à tous, and you've also written many books, including one with Bill McKibben, actually, and another one called Homo Natura, En harmonie avec le vivant, which could translate into living in harmony with other beings. You're a member of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, and you're also an expert of the United Nations Harmony with Nature initiative. You plead for the inclusion of international penal law of the crime of ecocide, and you promote a new form of justice that includes non-human beings. So Valérie, could you tell us more about this new social contract that includes any living beings?
I don't know if it's a new social contract. We were speaking about Indigenous people, and this is a contract that all humans before I would say, the emergence of Christianity and all monotheism, this contract was very normal. I mean, most of the Indigenous people are belonging to a territory and not considering that the territory is there. They are sharing this territory with all beings. remember Philippe Descola, anthropologist, saying that the Achuar people in Peru and Ecuador, when they were speaking about other beings within their territories, they were speaking about their parents. And so it's just to remind us that this social contract with everything living on Earth should be revived again. And we shall recognize that with the climate crisis, with the sixth mass extinction that we are facing today, we have to remember that we are intertwined, interdependent with other ecosystems, with other living species. And then we cannot guarantee anymore our right to life, our right to health, our right to food, our right to habitat, to medicine, if we don't guarantee the rights of the elements of nature to exist, to be regenerated, to thrive. And the fact to propose a new legal system in the Western world, saying that we need to recognize the rights of nature, is just in a way to come back to our origins, the cosmogony of humankind for thousands and thousands of years.
So this journey could be actually a journey back to the origin. Yeah. And could you give us examples of countries or regions of the world where nature has rights?
Yeah, so there are many ways today to recognize the rights of nature. It's true that the first countries to recognize the rights of nature within their constitution were in South America. It was Ecuador in 2008, and then Bolivia with a law on the Pachamama in 2009, and which was in place in 2010. But there are some counties in the US who started to recognize the rights of the natural communities around them and their own rights to govern themselves in harmony with those ecosystems. Back in 2006, in Pennsylvania, for example, Tamaka, it started in 2006, and now we have more than 3 dozen of counties and municipalities in the US who recognize the rights of nature, and we have maybe now 6 Indian nations recognize in their tribal constitution the rights of nature. But there are other ways to recognize the rights of nature which are experimented around the world. It can be passed by agreements and laws, like treaties. It happened in New Zealand, and you have ecosystems in New Zealand like the Whanganui River, the Te Uerera Park, National Forest, which became, it's very interesting, it lost its status of national park and it became its own owner. And the Maori people living there were nominated as guardians of those places. In Asia, you have in India now a lot of court decision granting legal personhood to the elements of nature, like the Ganges and some glaciers, like the Yamuna and the Gangotri. In Bangladesh, 450 rivers now are granted legal personhood because of a judge. And it happened in Colombia also, where the Supreme Court of Colombia decided that to protect and to prevent further harm to the Amazon forest should be recognized as a person, as a living being, and grant rights to the Amazon. So you see it's happening everywhere, and it started to happen in Africa. Uganda in 2019 passed a law recognizing the rights of nature in Uganda.
Thank you very much, Valérie, for this overview of really examples full of hope for the future of rights for nature. So before I'll switch to our next panelist, I'd just like to say that Victoria, in your title, there was a bit of a mistake, and so you are an ethnoecologist, so that everybody is agree on this. And so, yeah, now last but not least, I'm really happy to welcome Vic Muniz. Vic, you're a Brazilian artist and photographer. You are a master at turning basically anything into art, since you've used materials such as tomato sauce, diamonds, and chocolate syrup to make really beautiful masterpieces. And your art has been displayed in the most influential museums all over the world. You're also a mosaic artist, which is extremely inspiring for the collective story that we're currently writing. And you're also a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador, currently working on an artistic collaboration to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the MAB program. So as part of this artistic collaboration with UNESCO, Vic, could you please tell us what story you want to tell?
Well, when you mention the mosaic, I think it's an interesting thing, because a mosaic, you have to correlate parts and the whole. What Bill was saying about the whole Earth picture, that was presented in the 60s by a photograph from Intelsat, I think it failed in a way that you have an image, but it failed to unify all the stories, the little parts that, it just showed one part of the story. I find that once you have this focusing, that you can come from one picture that unifies everything, and then you get closer to all the parts that this picture is made of. You have the two sides of a story. As an artist, first of all, I'm humbled by the expertise of my panel colleagues. I deal in the world of appearances, of impressions. And I find that in a way, we have something to say about, how to improve the state of affairs environmentally. I did a film about 11 years ago. There was supposed to be an arts project, but I had to deal with the issue of garbage, and then that actually put me completely, I just parachuted into the world of, environmental issues. And since then, there's like not one place in the world that I have visited that I wasn't invited to visit, like a landfill or a garbage place. And that just sprouted into a number of other interests. As an artist also, that art for me has always been the idea of this interface between the rich world that's around us and how that translates into mind.
And maybe while you speak, we can show on the screen some examples of pieces of art that you've done. So please go on. But yeah, we'll show different examples, and you can comment on them as well.
Well, the way I see it, is it's this long story, this big narrative that we fail to piece together in our mosaic of this multitude of stories that we are able to tell. And it starts in the Neolithic, and then as we developed as human beings, art has been about creating tools to make this interface possible between the world and our mind. And we developed these very powerful tools. We developed language, developed the use of images. And these very tools that we developed, to actually make us interface with the reality around us, we're also responsible for creating a distance. We built this vast simulacrum, and we lost our instincts along the way. I think we, as an animal cat that sniffs everything before it eats, we have food poisoning all the time because we lost that kind of ability. And that loss of ability has been responsible for most of our failure towards making this big picture that we're supposed to make right now. I think the art, it's piecing together all these little narratives into something that can be understood in both focal ways, from the details to the big picture, has been, I think it has become the responsibility of any living artist today.
And according to you, what is this change of perception that the world needs today? What new eyes do we need?
I think we have a lot to, I was listening to what Victoria had to say, and I had, this interfacing with the world, it just happens outside the studio as you're looking at the park or you're looking at trees. But also, as we have the possibility to explore a little bit further, you just realize how other cultures still are very much in touch with the idea of ambient. I'm not talking about environment, I'm talking about ambient, because it's something that's humanly produced. And we have a lot to learn. I was just recently interacting with the Koikuru in the Xingu National Park, and it's becoming like a passion of mine, trying to understand or trying to readapt my senses toward the sensibilities of indigenous people. Some of these people, they can hear plants. They can talk to the environment because they don't feel distinct from it. They are part of it. It's something that we completely lost. I think the invention of the window pane, has separated man from nature to such extent that we look at nature as something outside of our existence. When you mentioned, the fact, this is we can readapt in many ways, culturally speaking. When just the fact that you mentioned that we have more bacteria than cells in our bodies. When I say that to my kids, it changes the perception of what we are, because we are not just ourselves. This idea of like we being a unity, something that exists outside the environment or the ambient, has really been in a way for us to understand things a little bit farther. The idea that the indigenous people, they don't feel as a part separated from nature. They feel they are part of it. They don't own the land. They are the land. And we lost the ability to think like this. It's just like same way we don't have the ability to see or perceive a fourth or a fifth dimension. We have lost this very basic ability to exist in our own environment. I think we can conquer a little bit of this senses by being in touch with people who still have the kind of sensibility, and to translate that into a sort of educational project that can, perhaps will yield some results.
Thanks a lot, Vic. So if I listen to you, we should now remove our windows and sniff our food and not feel ashamed about it, because it's the new way to really reconnect with the living world. And what we realize listening to all four of you, is that we all have a role to play in this story. And we hope that we all have a role to build a more sustainable society where we can live together on Earth. What I'd like to ask you now is, to all four of you, Bill, Victoria, Valerie, and Vic, what gives you hope today? What really nurtures your commitment, nurtures your actions, your activity to keep building this society? Who wants to start?
I can start.
Vic, go ahead. Yeah.
What gives me hope is just that as you live long enough, you perceive that there is a change. As Bill was saying, there is I feel it through my lifetime that people start to, I don't know if it's we have enough time, because it's something that happens in generations. I remember driving in my car with my parents, my mother throwing things outside the window of the car, and I'm saying, "Mom, don't do that," And now, as I'm shaving, my son comes and closes the faucet, and that alone, just little gestures, just already translating some kind of development that we learn in something. But again, we're far from actually feeling, the need. It's not just knowing. It's just like we need a more sensorial education that allows us to actually be in touch with our former selves and feel part of the environment instead of being apart from it.
Yeah, reconnect to our emotions. We were talking about this earlier. Victoria, you want to? Yeah.
For me, there are two things that give me hope. One is nature in itself, because when you look around outside, nature has this power of regenerating, right? That, you always think that, we are hurting, but if we change our behavior, there's this power that nature has to regenerate and to thrive and to, so of course, for climate change, I think it's a little bit not so clear how nature is going to regenerate through this this hardship that we are putting it through. But the power of nature, of kind of like thrive, that gives me hope. The other thing is that, as Vic was saying, all this like new movement in young people, no? Like when your kids come and tell you, "Mom, you just," even my kids are very critical. You just keep talking about biodiversity, but what are you doing? So this emphasis of the new generations in telling us that we should actually change the way we are constructing things. It's hope, right? It's hope because they are the ones who actually are gonna stay longer here after us. And I mean, the fact that they push us, it gives me hope to stay strong and say, yeah, we need to keep doing it.
Thanks a lot, Victoria. Bill, Valerie, who wants to go next?
Well, I don't always have hope all the time. I mean, I wrote the first book about climate change 30 some years ago, and it had the cheerful title, The End of Nature. So, you know, and nothing that's happened in the last 30 years has convinced me it's not going to come true. But, you know, there are things that give one hope. 10 years ago, Exxon was the biggest company on planet Earth. And millions of people have spent the last 10 years kicking it in the nuts every day. And that's begun to pay off, you know. They're no longer the biggest company in the world, and they're no longer able to completely dominate our political life. And the same with Total, and the same with Shell, and the same with BP, and the same with everybody else who's, you know, been lying about climate change for decades and trying to take us down. So good on all the people who really are standing up as heroes. There are millions of them around the planet. We've gone to jail, we've marched, we've done everything we could think of, and there are at least signs that it's beginning to turn around. Whether, as Vic said, it's turning around fast enough is another question. This is a timed test. It's the first timed test that humans have ever had. If we don't solve climate change soon, we will never solve it because no one has a plan for refreezing the Arctic once it's melted, you know. But thank God there are lots and lots of people who care enough to go out and put themselves on the line.
Thanks, Bill. Valerie, what did you do today?
It's I'm following the thought of Bill because on one hand, I don't see a bright future in few decades, and what makes me work every day on these causes is really because I think that we have to save, even if it's one life, we have to save it, and everything we will do will save lives because there are millions of lives which are at stake with climate change, and I don't speak about, of course, all the other species than humankind. But on the other hand, with the victory yesterday in the Netherlands, there were 17,000 people suing the case, suing Shell yesterday. And when we sue the French state in France, we had more than 2 million people signing their support to the case in 1 month. So which means that you have more and more people who are aware of the situation, and of course the youth is really in the front line, and I do hope that they will change the whole system. The problem is that we still have, you know, to sue governments, to sue multinationals, and they are still very powerful. So we have to continue this, but that's why I believe in the law, I believe in justice, I believe in courts, because I think that justice is the last wall before switching to violence. And we need to have the court with us, which I explain is happening with the rights of nature, but also on all climate justice cases. And if justice is on our side, then we might change things. And also about the you mentioned the fact that I'm making this, I'm advocate for the crime of ecocide, which is the crime against nature. This also is working quite well since 2 years. Since the fires in the Amazon and in Australia, we have more and more parliamentarians interested in, supporting the idea. The Pope said that he is supporting also the idea. Greta Thunberg expressed her support and help the Stop Ecocide Foundation. So we still have to continue, but we shall not be naive, and we have to understand that human survival is really at stake today, and so we cannot just resign, even if it's always great, to be in nature and to be confident in nature, because I love nature and it's resourceful, but we really have to work to protect her and then protect us at the same way.
Yeah, and to realize what's at stake, as you said.
Because we are nature. We are nature.
We are nature fighting for itself, as some activists say. Thank you very much, Valérie. Thank you very much to all four of you for these deeply inspiring words. Wow, we've already been far on our journey to really identify what we can do to build this more harmonious society. We could check Veron's screen. I think we saw it earlier, but maybe we can see what elements we've gathered for our story. So we know that, men and women are part of a much larger chain that we're facing the most critical peril humankind has ever faced with climate change and biodiversity loss. But we also have powerful allies, and among them, legal experts giving rights to nature, indigenous wisdom, and artistic creations, and also, mediatic action. So the peril is known, the utopia is also within sight. And what we now need is to better identify the challenges, the renouncement, and the resources that we can count on this journey. So we'll further explore this in the next sequence, dedicated to concrete actions. So thank you again to our speakers, to our panelists, and good luck. And this was a really victorious week for climate justice. Let's hope that there are many more to come. And before we move on to our next session, let's take a quick step aside and watch a selection of videos reminding us that the diversity of life on Earth really looks like. And these videos showcase solutions where humans live in harmony with other species. They illustrate these interactions, and they highlight again that humans are part of the solution. And the first video, the first one, is coming from our partner, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and it is highlighting Biodiversity Day. Please enjoy.
In the minds of men. It is in the minds of men that the defences of peace must be constructed.
Biosfeerreservaat in Suid-Afrika.
The Gouritz Cluster Biosphere Reserve, from the arid Karoo to the Cape Garden route, tells the story of life in its diversity, endurance, and age-old paths to future survival, stretching far beyond these mountains. For the community in the isolated town of Van Wyksdorp, restoration of degraded ecosystems has become a livelihood in itself, all revolving around this climate-adjusting succulent. This spekboom, a carbon capturer of note, cleaning up, conserving, and feeding. A gift passed on to the next generation to share beyond man-made borders.
Ek is trots om my Biosfeerreservaat te deel.
So welcome back to our webinar about how we can live together on Earth, a webinar by UNESCO. For the new sequence, we're going to talk about actions. And as I said, we're going to welcome new panelists who are as inspiring as the one we just had with us. And I'm really pleased to welcome them because they are from all over the world and they are really inspiring in showing us what role we can play to act for nature. So I'll start with you, Rebecca Yego-Leibish. You're actually the youngest panelist here, and in the previous sessions, we've talked about the importance of the next generation to step up and act for nature. And you, Rebecca, you embody this new generation of environmentalists and activists who are clearly determined to change the world and to change the narrative that goes with it. You grew up in Kenya near the Biosphere Reserve of Mount Elgon. You just graduated from university and you've launched your own community organization dedicated to the conservation of local biodiversity. And this led to a collaboration with the MAB program. So I'd like to ask you, Rebecca, and don't forget to unmute your mic when you start speaking. What does it mean to you to coexist in harmony with nature?
Thank you very much, and to all our viewers. I'm very humbled to be in this position as a young environmentalist who is ensuring that we are living in harmony with nature. I really believe that there is need to live in harmony with nature to coexist peacefully because we depend on one another. We cannot do without each other. So it is very important that we step up and take action. So to me, it is very important to just preach the message that conservation of biodiversity is key, and not only in Mount Elgon Biosphere Reserve, but in the entire world, so that we can see a situation where in future we are living in harmony with nature and we are building a shared future for all lives on Earth.
And what has the MAB program?
I think that is what I can say.
Yeah. What has the MAB program?
I really think the MAB program has impacted in my activity in a way whereby I believe that we are coexisting in harmony with nature because of the spirit that has been developed by the MAB program just to educate us. In most cases, I tend to view during my free time the activities of the MAB youths and the MAB group across the world, and I think I'm really motivated by what they are doing. And this is through the engagement of young people, more especially because, you know, we are the future, and whatever future we want to leave to the younger generations, it's very important. So I really believe that the MAB program has played a key role in impacting me and just making me realize that we can act with our body, we can be the change the world really needs.
Thanks a lot, and we'll go back later to this idea. I'd like now to welcome Nimo Bassey. Nimo, you are a Nigerian architect and environmental activist, but also an author and poet. So you know what we're talking about when we're talking about storytelling and stories in general. You've been the executive director of the Environmental Rights Action for 2 decades, and the Time magazine named you a hero of the environment. So you're going to tell us a bit more about your hero of the environment journey. And you're also a member of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, just like Valérie Cabanès, who was with us earlier. And you dedicated your life to the protection of environmental human rights in Nigeria, especially fighting against the devastation of fossil fuel extractions. So can you tell us, Nimo, during your journey, what have been the main challenges?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for putting together this very important event and for having us on this panel. Every single event has been important. Anything that disrupts the relationship of nature, of man from nature, is extremely important. And this is what my whole life has been, more or less my whole life has been. I've been involved in fighting to restore harmonious relationship in terms of protecting the rights of communities, rights of individuals, not just in isolation, but as collectives. And so the major challenges I've seen so far is that the development pattern in the world, the political pattern and geopolitical relationship has been very colonial. And this affects the mode of production, the mode of relationships, even the mode of negotiations on multilateral levels.
And what do we need, according to you, to end this colonial mentality?
First of all, we have to realize that we are all human beings. We are humans, and there are other beings sharing the planet with us. Well, if we are interdependent with other beings like insects, birds, other animals, then we must realize that we are also interdependent as humans. We cannot have some zones as sacrifice zones and other zones of the different kind of reality. And so we need solidarity in the world. We need to understand one another. We need to learn to share stories, share imaginations, and share a common future. This is, we can't do otherwise. We just have to have a certain imagination that rings throughout the world and that we can all key into. And this is why conversations of this nature are very important.
Yeah, and again, we'll get back to this later. Thanks a lot, Nimo. All right, now let's travel from Africa to Asia to meet Shubhendu Sharma, an Indian social entrepreneur who's been growing mini forests all over the world with his company Aforest. Shubhendu is nurturing our collective story with new words, actually, because he has shaped the word forestscape as an alternative to landscape. And I'm really happy to welcome him because he also happens to be a dear friend. So Shubhendu, what prompted you to leave your comfortable position at Toyota to venture into forest making?
So thank you, Emma. Great to see you again. And hello, everyone. The main reason why I shifted from being an engineer in automobile industry to now a forest maker is because I happened to meet a scientist all by a chance, Dr. Akira Miyawaki. And in that half an hour introductory session of his work, I was so moved looking at some of the before and after pictures of his work that I almost then and there decided, I really can't pinpoint when that transformation happened, but probably the seed of the idea that this is something which can be taken up professionally and probably I can make forests for the rest of my life was kind of planted in that half an hour interaction, which happened purely as a coincidence. But I also feel that these small coincidences, these small instances are the main reason how our life would take shape. So it was very serendipitous for me, but at the same time, that's how I think more joyous things happen in life.
Yeah, and we can feel the emotion listening to you. What is your secret to make magic happen, to nurture joy, to nurture magic on your actions?
I feel that every time we make a new forest, when we go to a new patch of land, that land would have a story. There would have been a forest a long time ago there, and it would have gone through a transformation. Probably first the land was converted into agricultural fields, then a village would have come up, then a city would have come up. But at the core nature of that place, the land, the soil still has the potential to bring back a natural forest on it. If you leave the land without human intervention, maybe for 300-400 years, it will grow a forest back on it. So our motivation comes from the natural process, the natural flow of things, and we would work with the nature rather than against it. And with this philosophy, whatever we do, it ends up in bringing back a lost natural forest, restoring a lost ecosystem, clearing the waterways, refreshing the air and whatnot.
Yeah, and this will all contribute to shaping a different setting for the next generation. Thanks a lot, Shubhendu. I'm now extremely excited to welcome Jérémy Gobet, a French artist who also knows how to make magic happen. Through his project Corail Artifact, Jérémy is making connections between coral patterns and traditional lace making. He is deeply inspired by the concept of biomimicry, and he's creating new materials that intertwine nature's genius and human's genius, giving birth to a new type of symbiosis. So Jérémy, your work aims at saving both biological diversity and cultural diversity. What links do you see between them? And don't forget to unmute your mic.
Okay, you hear me? It's okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, sorry. The link is a natural link. I think in all the history, there is always a bridge between art creation, human creation, and nature inspiration. I think nature is the first inspiration for the first artist. So there is always a link. And there is another link. It's that we learn history with the support of art. So I think it's a really thin link, and it's from the beginning of the humanity to have a link between art and nature. But maybe in the modern time there is a break between nature and art, and nature and our everyday life. In every domain, in every side of the society. So maybe now, with all the wonderful projects that we hear today with this conversation, we see that there is we bring back nature in our everyday life. But it will be there. It was there, I think, since the beginning.
Thanks, Jeremy. And actually, we can show some examples of your pieces of art while you were answering to my next question. What do we as humans need to live in symbiosis with nature? And you can take inspiration from the pictures we show to answer.
Okay. I think the inspiration is a technical inspiration and a philosophical inspiration. I think my project, To Sake Our Artifact, is about bring art, science, industry, and education together, but it's from art first. I'm an artist first. I make scientific tests. I make a lot of education projects, but art is a heart of the project. And particularly, I use lace, a really old lace technique from a small city in France. And this old lace was inspired by a natural pattern who is really looking like coral. When you see the skeleton of this really specific species of coral, and you see the lace between, it's really striking that it's really look like the same. So it's really biomimicry, but by the shape, but by the use too. Now I use the lace to bring back life in coral reef, and there is it's to sum up, it's nature make really amazing art piece every day. The nature is really inspiring, but there is always a function, and it's a really difference between the art with not particularly aimed by a function, but nature, it's both beautiful and function, and the beauty of nature have a function, and like the color of the plants for all the bees and the attraction with the bees, it's the same with coral, it's the same everywhere in nature, and this is what I want to put in my artwork. It both aesthetics, art, and function.
Thanks, Jeremy. And now we're going to talk about another form of art, which is gastronomy. And I'm really pleased to welcome Mauro Colagreco, a famous Argentinian chef who now lives in the south of France. Mirazur, his restaurant in Menton, has a 5-hectare garden where he grows his own fruits, his own vegetables, his herbs. And this restaurant has 3 stars at the Michelin Guide and has also been awarded as the world's best restaurant in 2019. But he's also the world's first plastic-free restaurant, so it has a lot of rewards. And Mauro, you're yourself deeply committed to protecting biodiversity through your cuisine at Mirazur, but also through Carne, a chain of hamburger restaurants in Argentina, and through the cultivation of traditional old seeds. So could you please tell us how you preserve biodiversity through your cuisine?
Bonjour à tous, je suis ravi de partager ces moments avec tous.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. So how can we protect biodiversity? Well, simply by adapting gastronomy to the rhythms of nature, to nature. Now, during these talks, which were really interesting, I heard very interesting things. We said that we had to go back to nature, to the different cycles, and we had to coexist with nature. I would actually like to say that we need to coexist with ourselves because we are nature itself. And this small difference between us and nature actually created a large distance between us and nature. And we are part and parcel of this nature. And it's very important to go back to this concept, to this idea. And this is important for what we eat and how we eat it. And we need to learn how to live with this nature that's incredible. Learn once again. Nature has this strength, which is incredible. I listened to Shwendu, who talked about memory of the earth. This is extraordinary. So soils regenerate much faster than we think. We don't necessarily need a century or several centuries. I see it on my lands, and we grow fruits and vegetables on land that was devastated for many years. And now they're completely fertile lands, and we can grow plants 30, 40 centimeters long, and there's a lot of wealth, a lot of biodiversity. And I'm very hopeful, actually. I have hope. I think that man can once again be part of this nature and coexist with nature. I'm going to ask my question in French because we have interpreters with us. So in your restaurant, it's a three Michelin star restaurant, and it's associated with a certain form of luxury. But this being said, isn't luxury changing the way we see things? And what is a real luxury? What's true luxury, after all? Yes. Real luxury. Well, some people interpret it differently. For the past few years, we have had an idea of luxury that has grown old. And for me, luxury is reconnecting with simple things, reconnecting with nature. Having a small garden, having one's own produce, which is a form of luxury today. In the past, my grandparents, my parents even did this. This was completely normal. And they were ordinary people. You didn't have to be rich to grow your own fruits and vegetables. Today, luxury is going back to eating 70% of products coming from the earth. So yes, this is luxury for me. And what we know as luxury today is completely disconnected from this. So you have beautiful cities, very lovely buildings that are very expensive. and you live in these beautiful buildings on top of each other. And in Paris, for example, only 3% of Parisians' fruit and vegetable consumption comes from produce from the Île-de-France region. So we have built a society that needs to be changed. We need to rethink society.
That's a question I'd like to ask all of the panelists. So now for the next 15 minutes, I will ask questions and anybody can answer. What do you think that we as humankind must absolutely give up on to live in harmony with nature? What do we need to leave behind? Who wants to answer first? Jeremy? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly, for me, the main thing we have to destroy is the walls between the different parts of the society. I think we are really in small box, science, art, environment, social activists. Everyone is in one direction, and I think we have to destroy these walls and really think globally like nature. I think if we have the example of nature, if we take out one species of the cycle, all the cycle is falling down. So I think we have to think like nature if we want to live peacefully, like Mauro said, with the nature and be a part of the nature. I think we have to destroy the walls and really think globally and work really together. Even if we are not from the same country, the same discipline, the same workspace, we have to work together and think together, I think.
Thanks, Jeremy. Mimo, Rebecca. Oh, Mauro, go ahead.
Ok. Non, je pense effectivement que bon, Jérémy parlait des murs. Moi, je parle des.
I think that it's true that we have to break down these walls, but I also think that we have to unwind all of the complicated knots that we have created over the last 100 years. It's all gone very fast. We are living in an ultra consumerist society, and I think that everybody should do what they can at their own level to rethink the way in which they are consuming today. I also think that it is very important to keep in mind the fact that we tend to desperately want things that we don't really need. And these are the things we should be giving up.
Il y a une vraie différence entre les pays.
Yes, there is a big difference between the developed countries and the developing countries or the third world countries. As you know, I come from a country that is very poor, and I live today in a highly developed country, so I know that of what I speak. And I think that in everything we do, we have to think about what we really need and what we don't need, and what we can quite easily give up on.
Thanks, Mauro. Yes, Shubhendu, please go ahead.
Oui, merci Mauro. Shubhendu, s'il vous plaît.
Called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which means the entire earth is one single family. And it said that there are 8.4 million species on the planet, and they are all interconnected. So if you look at the human evolution, it has most of the times we were living in a forest or close to a forest. If we are living in a village, we are still close to nature. So we have evolved with all the other 8.4 million species on the planet. And it's only in the last 200 to 300 years that we have surrounded ourselves with so much concrete, with so much urbanization around us. And we are more frustrated mentally, physically. We are very unhealthy. We are eating a lot of junk food, which is not food. It looks like food, but it is not. And all of this can be reversed if we just try to bring back the lifestyle which we had when we were evolving as a species. So our cloth that we wore came from the plants, not from the petroleum. The food that we ate came from the trees or maybe from the wildlife around us, not from a factory, not the processed food. So as much as more healthier we try to be, as much as more organic and more natural we try to be, we also become more familiar and closer with all the other 8.4 million species on the planet. So some people might think that lifestyle change is something which is only for the environmentalist. It's not. It's for our selfish reasons to become more healthier, more happier, both mentally and physically. So for our well-being, we should start making these small changes in our lifestyle, and definitely we will start to live in harmony with nature without even thinking about it.
Thanks a lot, Shubhendu. Nimo, Rebecca, would you like to add something on what you mentioned?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I really think part of the actions we can do is to just raise awareness, especially to younger generations, because, you know, things to do with environmental conservation is a habit. And the way you are raised, believing in maybe, you know, throwing litter on the road, maybe watching the killing of wildlife. That is the things that people tend to grow up with and believe that is right. But if we raise a generation which is cautious about conservation of the environment and biodiversity at large, then we shall be bringing a solution to the current problems we are having in the world. And this training will be passed to other generations, which will be of benefit, more especially to the conservation of biodiversity. I also think the rights of the local people and indigenous groups over the recent years in conservation of biodiversity has not been put into consideration. So it's very essential that we put into consideration those rights of indigenous people, as they are the actual they are the actual people who conserve the biodiversity within their region. So you'll find at times that the government may be pushing those people from the biosphere reserve, maybe for the sake of relocation, but they have not taken into account their consideration, because in the process of conserving nature, we should ensure that we are not harming the human beings in that planet, because we need to coexist in harmony with nature. And that means either way, we have to put into the consideration the opinions of each other. I also think we have to reduce on our bad consumption and production habits, because the production habits we are doing, probably here I have a plastic bottle, and you can find that other people are having bottles which they are not recycling it. So in the process of throwing these litter, such as those bottles which can't be recycled, we are endangering even the lives of those animals which live within the oceans. So it's very essential that we look into our production and the consumption habits as human beings. I think that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rebecca. And Nimo, the screen is yours.
I really agree with everything that's been said, and very enlightening. Just to add that one of the big challenges we have is that humans have a capacity to live in denial. Even when things go very wrong, we believe we can fix anything. And so we live very destructive lives, the worst predator on planet Earth. If other species were to behave like humans, we would have possibly gone extinct by now already. And so we're feeding off other species, and we're taking too much space. I believe the way we can overcome that, apart from what has been said before, is for human beings to just be humble to redefine what is a good life. What is the measure of well-being? What can we do to say that? I mean, the definition of luxury was very interesting. Reconnecting with nature. This is what intrinsically we actually are, one with nature, and we need to stop destroying Mother Earth. Mother Earth can do without us. Actually, can do without humans. And so it's a privilege for humans to remain with other species. One thing we can do immediately to stop extractivism, stop mining. We've mined enough. What are we doing with mining more gold? What are we doing with mining more oil and gas? We really know the impact on climate change, on continuous burning of fossil fuels, but why are we insisting on pushing in that direction? So we need some humility and some consideration just for our survival and that of other species.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And yes, you're right. We really need humility, and we need to not consider ourselves as a species that's above the others, but just as an interconnection of the living fabric that is biodiversity. The next sequence will be about mobilization of anybody, all the people who are watching us and all the people around us. What would be your advice, some tips you would have to help anybody to take action for nature right here, right now? So a very concrete piece of advice. Again, who wants to start? Yes, Shubhendu?
Okay, I can start because we have discussed it before as well. What I would advise is that making a forest, especially a tiny forest, is very much doable. And it's not an ad of what we do, but this is something which is everybody's task. The methodologies are open. And to make a forest, you have to start with seeds, which are native to your place. So you have to collect the seeds, find the local biomass around you. And the process of forest making has been kind of standardized already. So you can find out these processes over the internet, look for Miyawaki method, which we use, or maybe some other methodology, but try to create that change around you, because you can have easily control on the small patches of land around you, rather than thinking about how to solve the global issues, climate change, the big problems. There is a lot of talk about it, because eventually 50 years from now, 200 years from now, nobody is going to remember who protested on the street when we were trying to solve the larger ecological issues. But everybody will benefit. All the other 8.4 million species and the future generations of them are going to benefit, but with whatever tiny tangible impact you will be making on the ground around you. So let's put all our energies into action, and before we leave the planet or this life, let's create this tangible change which is probably going to exist till the next ice age. And I think that's the easiest thing one can do. I have started doing it 10 years ago with the backyard of my own house, and today it has expanded to so many other people as well, that a lot more work is done just by sharing of these methodologies. So it's easy, doable, and I think everybody should be able to do it.
Thanks. So yes, make a forest, plant a tree is one first really concrete action we can all take. Then who wants to go next? Yes, Mauro, go ahead.
Oui, moi j'ai une phrase que je les partage constamment avec mes enfants.
There is something that I am always sharing with my children and with my team. One sentence. And that's one daily action done by everybody will make a change. Every time we eat something, we have to associate it with the world around us. I think that this is a very, very powerful concept, because it immediately brings us back to reality, back to the fact that we can all be part and parcel of change. Everybody has the possibility of changing things. Every time we are going to eat something, we're going to choose what we're going to eat, we are choosing the world in which we want to live. It's short, it's concise, and it's succinct. Oui.
Jeremy, Rebecca, Mimo, another advice? Yes, Jeremy?
Yes, thank you. You know, recently I spent time with some fisher folks in some communities, just trying to learn what their struggles have been. I posed a simple question that I really wanted to hear these stories. What stories do you tell when you're going fishing? What songs do you sing? What did you hear from your grandparents, your forefathers, your ancestors? What are the stories? How are you preserving these stories? Because I was so much convinced that the stories from the past can tell us where to go in the future. And that was very interesting. Then we sat down 2 days. I went to a couple of communities and I listened to these fisher folk telling stories, and they were all telling me stories of their struggles, how they're struggling today. Nobody went back to the past to tell me the stories of the past. And I was very disappointed for a time, but then I learned that the stories that is important, the stories of our life today, the stories of our life is very important. Then we can see how different the stories that we're living, the songs we sing, the dance we dance, the poetry that we write, we can now, if you collect these stories and share these stories, we can place them side by side with what we know from the past, and then we can actually construct a new imagination for the future. I think we've really getting to know that the stories that are important to many of the people struggling for a daily living is the stories of their struggle. We should respect that, listen to them, and find ways of making life easier and better.
Yeah, and we were talking at the beginning of this event about the bedtime stories, or all the stories we're immersed in as kids. And maybe it's time to also tell ourselves different stories and to tell our kids different stories. Jeremy, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just it's a really hard question. I think we don't think how hard is it to answer this question, because it really depends of the condition of every people who can hear this conversation. I think already the public of this conversation is a specific public. I think about the people who are too poor to eat, too poor to have education. We can't say to us, you can do something for the planet, because they can't. They have priority in life. It's really hard to live in this world for some people in this world. So it's really hard to make one advice for everybody. But I think for those who have the luck to vote, I think the politics is really important, because it will impact every part of the society, the economical decisions, the industrial decisions. So I think for those who can read the program of the politician, if they don't have something about ecology inside, they will not make something great for the future. So I think the vote is really important. And the second advice, maybe for those who have the life where they can make action, it will be to learn. Education is really important. We can fight for something that we understand. So I think education is really important. So if you have the time and the opportunity to learn to your children about, like Mauro say with his child, to give advice, to give knowledge about the nature to your children, it's really important too. And maybe to finish, I think it's for those who have the luck too, is to ask themselves why they wake up in the morning, what's the really meaning of their life. Because if you are not happy in your life, if you don't know the direction where you want to go, you can't make something for someone else. So I think we are all example of people who have a passion, and we know why we are here on this planet. We have a direction, we have work to do, but there is a lot of people that don't know that. And I think we have a lot of work, and I don't know for all my mates today, but it's hard, it's every day, it's a lot of work, but the luck for us is we know why we are here. And I think it's the base is maybe nearly philosophical. It's what we want for the future, why we are here. And I think if we mix all this, we can, for the people who have the luck to act for the planet, we have a good direction to make something that will have a real impact.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks a lot. And Rebecca, would you like to add one piece of advice?
Yeah. Yeah, my message to whoever is listening is you can be part of the solution in healing nature through those little acts that you are doing in your community, through those little, very little things that you believe they may not have an impact, they actually do count. If you can pick litter in the highway, you are making a change in the society. And if you can practice proper farming, more especially through conservation of river banks, then that way you are healing nature, you are healing the fish which lives in the water. So whatever, every little step really counts in conservation of biodiversity. And all I can say is that you don't have to have taken a course in environmental conservation for you to actually develop the passion in all these. Is everything starts from inside. It's about the passion that you are creating inside. Whether you are a doctor, whether you are an engineer or something else, whatever change you impact in the world today will count to the future generations. So do not take the activities that you are doing for granted. Make sure that we embrace this movement of conservation of biodiversity, and let's make sure that we are being part of the solution in healing nature and not harming it. That is my point for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for this wisdom and for all these tips. Actually, thanks to every one of you. It was really deeply inspiring and also very concrete. Again, we've learned a lot and we now know the ingredients more or less to tell a very compelling story, a new story for how humans can live together on Earth. So thank you again. And now we're going to move to Veram's screen to see what images, what drawings have been drawn actually during this session. So yeah, we are nature. We now know that to live together on the earth, we should be driven by love, not by fear. We can get inspiration from both our ancestors and the generations to come. The symbiosis is within reach, but we also need to end a lot of things. We need to give up on a lot of things, including the colonial mentality that is still really harming the planet and our relationships as human societies. And we also need to change the standards of what is desirable. So we see here the new symbiosis, memory of the earth. And among the tips that have been shared, so again, make a forest or plant a tree if you can, if you have the privilege to do so. Each time you eat something, you know that you choose the world that goes with it, so eat carefully. We need to tell ourselves new stories. We need to vote and keep learning all lifelong, teaching around us what we know about the beauty of nature. We also need to find our passion. We need to ask ourselves, why do we wake up in the morning? And we know that we can be confident that we are part of the solution. So now that we have a clear view of the peril, of the dream, of the journey, of who we can count on, we can now ask ourselves, what can we as individuals, as societies, what can we do to really change the way we live? And some of us may already have gone a long way towards living in harmony with nature, but others may be at the very beginning of their trip. And no matter where you are, remember that you are part of this story and that you're part of the solution, of this mosaic of solution. And of course, you're part of this life chain. And before we take a closer look at our last sequence, so the last sequence will be about mobilization, let's now take another step aside to watch another selection of videos which highlight solutions and how humans can live in harmony with nature. And so we're going to travel now to Gabon, to France, and to Bolivia. Please enjoy the coming videos.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Aurélie, je suis de la réserve de biosphère Luberon-Lure.
Dans le sud de la France, entre le Luberon et la montagne de Lure, la coopération collective nous engage sur des projets pour la protection de la nature, la gestion de l'eau et des forêts, le géotourisme, les économies d'énergie, l'éducation du public, mais aussi le soutien à l'agriculture locale. Au restaurant scolaire du village de Cadenay, Éric Prado, le chef, accueille chaque jour 300 enfants. Il achète les produits frais en direct aux producteurs locaux comme Nicolas Mallet. L'opération De la ferme à ta cantine, lancée en 2009, permet aujourd'hui aux enfants de 30 communes de manger régulièrement des produits locaux.
Les vrais légumes, c'est là où il y a toutes les vitamines. C'est hyper important pour les enfants.
Ma réserve de biosphère is proud to share.
Cachorro montung si mo reserva ane derhem si kami mendera tanya kawak sang ane derhem mencerupai mo stasiun biologika karika kiri atsum.
Hello, my name is Claire Celeste. I am in Germany and I'm an artist and an environmentalist. With nature growing up in Brazil, encountering the dazzling beauty of the Amazonas. I woke up to the crisis of biodiversity loss when I realized how many of the species I depict in my artwork are facing extinction. I believe we must rekindle our connection with the living earth. So I create immersive and collaborative art experiences, workshops and events that explore our interconnectedness with the Earth's living systems and foster an appreciation for our planet's biodiversity. I commit to being part of the solution to live together on Earth.
Welcome to the last sequence of our journey. It's already the end of our journey, and yeah, time flies like a beautiful bird because it has been really quick with all these fascinating pioneers. So this last sequence is actually about the first chapter of your own narrative, of your own story of living in harmony with nature. We've all seen and we've all felt how urgent it is to act for nature. It's now time to take action, to spread the word and share your commitment. We've heard 10 stories of bifurcation, of courageous tipping points, but we know that millions of you are already acting to change the narrative and act for nature. So we can change the course of things because we're many. And even multinationals like LVMH have joined the MAB program of UNESCO and are acting for nature. So now I'd like to tell you more about this UNESCO program, which has been created for you to join and share your voice. It's called Living Together on Earth, and this movement takes roots in the key year of biodiversity, during which it is essential to mobilize a maximum of actors. Very concretely, to join the movement, you simply have to send a short 60-second video presenting a commitment you've taken to live in harmony with nature and recreate a link with the living world. UNESCO is inviting you today to share your story and contribute to writing the story of reconciliation. It can be any type of action, and the only thing you need to do is send an email to MAB50anniversary@unesco.org. Don't forget your heart, don't forget your body, of course, and your mind in these videos. They can be fun videos, they can be any type of videos, but the important thing is that you share your commitment and that you really show that there are millions of people all around the world acting for nature. These videos will then be adapted and shared by the mobilized actors, including the MAB program and UNESCO, at a rate of 1 video per week until the COP15. Many organizations have already joined the movement, of course, the Convention on Biological Diversity and all the UN Biodiversity Flotilla, among many others. So to join the movement, send your email, and we're really excited to watch your videos. And as part of this movement, we are also happy to invite you to save the date of June 5th, which is a very important day when UNESCO will contribute to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So UNESCO's ambition is to change the mindset of 100% of humans so that they reconcile with the rest of nature and become all custodians of Earth, our common home and heritage that we inhabit and share with all other living species. So in addition to halting destruction and restoring ecosystems, we need to restore and regenerate our relationship with nature and life by creating this new ethical behavior of care, of responsibility, and of solidarity. So save the date, June 5th, and you will join, you will contribute to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And yeah, because it's already the end of our event, I'm now gonna take a look back at our journey, and we're gonna be able to look at Veram's screen and all the different steps of our collective adventure today. So yeah, let's contemplate our journey and take a look again at Veram's screen. So this was about our mobilization. Things begin to change, and that's really fortunate. We have learned a lot. We've heard very concrete tips. So we see that the drawings are moving. So and yeah, we've done a lot in 2 hours. But as we said, it's only the very beginning of a much broader journey. And again, living together on Earth, this whole movement is only starting. What I'd like now is to thank all our partners, all the partners who have broadcasted this webinar. So I think their logo may appear at some points, but I'm going to list them all. So we'd like to thank ADEME, l'Office français de la biodiversité, Bleu Blanc Zèbre, Ground Control, Les Mondes d'Après, Make Sense, Alexa Barrier and For My Planet, Ushuaïa TV, Pure Project, Reforestation, Technicart, Circulaire, Entrepreneurs d'Avenir, Hello Asso, Auré, Elix, Mouvement Up, The Explorers, la Tribu du Vivant, la Fonda, On est prêt, le festival Le Temps Presse, and of course, Spark News and the narrative manufacturer who has been supporting UNESCO in making this event a success. Well, at least I hope you consider it a success, but myself, I've learned so much that I'm really, really excited about it. We'd also like to thank, of course, all the interpreters, all the Spark News and UNESCO team who have helped us make this event a reality. Thanks to Fabien Baron and all the BPROD team for the technical support and organization. So I think, yeah, the technical issue has been solved, so we can take a look back at the different drawings from Veram. So yeah, again, things begin to change, and that's good news for the Earth. We're developing tools to interface. And yeah, maybe we should spend less time watching our screen and more time contemplating nature. There are tons of reasons to be hopeful. More and more people are concerned, more and more people are acting. We are nature, we are nature fighting for itself, and we can all cohabit in harmony with nature. We can all help each other grow a forest, grow a tree. There is a new symbiosis to be built where our screens are maybe going to be less and less central in our lives. Yeah, and the Earth is a family. We are actually all cousins, even with bees and trees and plants. These are just far, far away cousins of a whole same family, a same living fabric. make a forest, start with a tree. Yeah, and stay humble. Humility and creativity have also been quoted as very important new values for this journey. How to tell a new story for those who are starving. Yeah, that's also a very important topic. Some of us have the privilege to really take action, and others are probably less privileged, and so it's important that the ones who can really act, and it's all about also climate justice. And last but not least, spread your stories. So send an email and share with us your 60-second videos to the email mab50anniversary@unesco.org. So thank you again to everyone. And it's now up to you to position yourselves as Earth Keepers, to quote the poem that we heard at the beginning of this event, as the wardens of this unique environment of which we are fully a part. And thanks again to each and every one of you for having joined this adventure. Let's the story begin. Let's share your voices. And we'll see you later soon. Thanks again.